Hello and welcome to this Into Action professional learning video on listening and talking. My name's Elaine McHenry, a member of the SBC Way Inspire Learning team leading on listening and talking. In today's session you hear some early level messages around assessment and a reminder of some key digital messages from across all levels. Today's starting quote is paraphrased from educationalist Andrew Wilkinson, who back in the mid-1960s coined the phrase Oracy, emphasising the need for Oracy to be treated with equal importance to reading and writing and numeracy. Before we begin, take a few moments to reflect on what he had to say. If you wish, pause the video and share your reflections with others, or just continue with the session. The main aim of today's session is to consider assessment and moderation in listening and talking. To do this, we'll remind ourselves of Education Scotland's moderation cycle, look at the benefits of observation in assessing listening and talking, and finish with some strategies, including digital tools that can support the assessment process. The QR code on the screen will take you to a file of support resources that you might find useful as we go through the session or later back in your own setting. Pause the video here and take some time to access the resources. You may need your Glow login. As with previous SBC Way professional learning sessions, we aim to make them as interactive as possible and will include core input, reflective questions and follow-up activities leading to new understanding. So, let's get started. You will be familiar with the Education Scotland's moderation cycle, the purpose of which is to ensure that we can maintain robust, confident judgments around assessment. Let's take a quick trip round the cycle just to remind ourselves. Starting at the top, we have of course learners at the heart of every stage of the cycle and of course in all that we do. Next, we plan learning, teaching and assessment using the experiences and outcomes. We use the E's and O's to plan a range and variety of experiences and pedagogy to support the intended outcomes of learning, including in early years core and continuous provision and intentional promotion. Using progression pathways linked to the E's and O's, we can track learners' progress throughout a level. Analysis of this is vital to identify which aspects need to be part of future planning. The next step in our moderation process is our learning intentions. These should clearly outline the expected learning and success criteria, clear, relevant and measurable steps to achieve the expected learning, all reflecting the skills, knowledge and capabilities needed to enable children's learning to progress. These can be co-constructed with the learners and provide a framework for feedback discussions. The main message from this step is that assessment should be planned as part of the learning and teaching so that it is clear what will be assessed and how it will be assessed. Learning, teaching and assessment draw together the learning experiences and assessment approaches to provide breadth, challenge and application, reflecting the quality indicator 2.3 of how good is our school, with a balance of formative and summative assessment being carried out using developmental overviews and trackers or progression pathways, whatever is relevant to your stage. As we progress through the cycle, we come to gathering evidence. A range of evidence demonstrating breadth, challenge and application should be considered when reviewing and evaluating progress towards or achievement of a level. The evidence will come from a variety of different sources, for example, learning journeys, floor books, classwork, jotters, observation of learning, planned periodic assessments and standardised assessments. Practitioners evaluate learning all the time to inform short-term planning. Teacher professional judgment is the mainstay of assessment within Curriculum for Excellence, so it is important that practitioners are given opportunities to evaluate and moderate together, identifying those children who are on track, those who require more challenge, and those who may need more learning experience to become secure in accordance with the Curriculum for Excellence benchmarks. The penultimate part of the cycle, feedback and next steps, should be based on the success criteria of the lesson. Feedback should be ongoing throughout the lesson as well as periodically to review a range of learning over time and to set longer term learning. Feedback and next steps identified should also inform teacher planning. The final step of our cycle, reporting, should reflect the most recent progress and next steps in learning, whether it is reporting back to the learner, senior leaders within school or across authority, or to parent carers. Bringing us, of course, back to the top of the cycle to begin all over again. We will revisit this moderation cycle towards the end of the session, looking at it through a specific listening and talking lens. Before we move on to looking at the moderation cycle through a listening and talking lens, let's take time to consider how the moderation cycle impacts our practice now. Which elements do you do well as a setting, as an individual practitioner, and where do you think there might be scope for development? Pause the video here and continue when you're ready. From our SBCOE assessment overview and calendar, it's recommended that listening and talking is assessed at 3 points throughout the year, creating a baseline between August and October, and revisiting by February mid-term break, and then finally at the end of the term. Assessment across the year should include an exploratory talk type, where learners are learning from each other, a group discussion which brings together the learning from an exploratory talk, and a presentational talk. The sheer nature of listening and talking makes assessment very informative, with learners engaging in exploratory talk, group discussions and presentational talk. High quality observations lie at the heart of listening and talking assessment, and again, the approach to this is something we can take on board from our early years colleagues. Evidence from observation can be recorded using a rubric or checklist, a discussion map, and of course, peer and self-evaluation. The use of digital tools plays a big part in how we assess listening and talking, as there are many apps that can be used to record and play back tasks, as well as those such as Keynote that can be used to support presentations, giving both learner and teacher the opportunity to gauge progress, provide feedback and identify next steps.
So just to go through a few digital tools that can support Oracy at early level. To support listening, practitioners can use the Voice Memos app to record sounds around them. It's essentially a dictaphone app, so it might be their voices, the sounds in the environment, or you might go on a walk and capture some of the sounds that you hear on the walk. GarageBand can also be used as a voice recorder, and it actually has a voice recording option where you can use filters so children can distort their voice. They can speak and sing songs into it and play with the filters it has. It's got things like from a chipmunk to a robot. GarageBand also has a live loops option where you can play with live loops and the children can play with those sounds as they listen to them along to the beat. They can choose to play one sound or multiple sounds on top of each other, multiple beats. You could also find an online rhyming game on the smartboard. Might be Top Marks or something like that, and that also supports children's gross motor skills using the smartboard, enables them to use it together, collaborate on it, and crossing that midline when they're stretching to tap all the parts of the smartboard as well. A few ideas to support talking. Practitioners could use the speech to text on the keyboard. If you see here, I've circled the microphone. If you bring up the keyboard, tap that microphone, and the children can speak into that and it will type the words that you're speaking basically. And it does mean that the children have to speak clearly, so it recognizes their words and they have to separate their words and understand about word boundaries, so that can be helpful. Keynote Live allows you to superimpose a background and has a live video, a bit like this essentially, and you can take away the background, put a photo in the background, and the children can talk about their favorite toy or their weekend or their holiday with something in the background, and you can screen record that to capture that as well. In the Clips app, you can use emojis for them to talk about their feelings, so they can use the emojis as prompts and maybe make the same faces as those emojis as well, and record a video of themselves talking about that emotion and how it feels. So further up the school, there are numerous digital tools available. Again, using the dictation tools that I talked about on the previous slide, which is that microphone on the keyboard, that will support fluency by encouraging children to think. So when I speak out loud into my iPad, does it type everything I want it to? If not, how could I change my tone, my volume, my speech to do so? On Keynote Live or on iMovie's green screen feature, you can with both of these tools, you can record maybe a news report or some other type of speaking exercise, which then basically these features allow a photo background to be placed behind the person presenting so they can pretend they're actually in situ. If you're using the Pages app, which is like the Microsoft Word Apple version of Microsoft Word, there is presenter mode, which actually works as an auto cue or teleprompter for students to support them when they speak in front of an audience, like I'm doing now. The speed of the scrolling text that goes up on the page can be adjusted to help the child speak slowly and clearly. It also allows you to change the size, font and colour of the text and background to allow for different reading preferences of the children. You can also use iMovie to create like a documentary style interview, perhaps. They might want to pretend they're interviewing a famous person from history. Children can put together images, videos on this app and enhance their images and videos with voiceovers, effects, titles and music, as well as using a range of editing features for the actual video itself. They could create maybe an information video about their local area using the Clips app. This is also a video app. It's actually simpler than iMovie and will be easier for the younger learners to use. But essentially, you do a similar thing to iMovie with less features. Just pop in those photos and videos to make your own video. You can also use the GarageBand app to make a podcast potentially by recording some voice and interviewing somebody, maybe a classmate about if you're having a debate in class, maybe about their side of the debate. You can pop in some little jingles and sound bites in that as well. There are inbuilt tools in the iPad to support understanding of vocabulary. So for example, in PDFs or if you're in the Books app, if you tap and hold on a word, it will select it and then it will come up with a lookup. So you tap on lookup and it will define the word that you've selected with text, sometimes with a picture, maybe provide a dictionary definition and even translate it as well. Speaking of translation, if you go over to the Google Translate app, there are spoken translation tools where you can use the transcribe function. You speak into the app and it will translate what you're saying instantly. And there's also a conversation function on that app where it transcribes essentially both ways. So you speak into the app, it will translate what you've said and read that translation out loud. And then you can do it the other way too. It's really helpful for interacting with children and families who have English as an additional language. You can find a wealth of short demo videos on the Inspire Learning YouTube channel that will give you little short demo videos to support you using digital technology in your classroom. Or as well as this, you can get in touch with your Cluster Inspire support teacher for more information on how you can support your children to use digital tools in your classroom.
In ELK, observations around listening and talking are guided by the core flow of the day in routines and experiences offered daily and through the continuous provision intentionally planned experiences offered. Observations around the responsive element to provide for children's interests will enable rich opportunities for development of vocabulary and exploratory talk opportunities. Here is an example of an ELK observation around story time. Within ELK, this is an example of a significant observation for this child, as she generally chooses not to take part fully in story time, and here she shows that she is fully engaged, but also asks a question related to the pictures which demonstrates she is focused. Further examples would be taken to ensure Jennifer is becoming more secure in her listening and talking skills in a variety of situations or contexts through the use of the SBC early level trackers in ELK. If in a Primary 1 classroom, we could use the progression pathway to highlight how Jennifer is progressing over time and ensuring secure next steps for her or within the group she is in. Observation at first and second level may involve assessment by exception. Your starting point is of course the learning intention and success criteria. We then look at who is excelling in their learning and who is needing further support. We would be formatively noting the children in each area and considering how we would then support or challenge appropriately. You need to become familiar with the progression pathways to support these next steps. Within Oracy skill development, you would need to have clear planning around where their focus is and what good looks like for each part of the Oracy framework. What good looks like should be shared with the children to enable them to develop an understanding of what they are learning. Now let's take some time to watch learners in action. The clip you'll see is a small group of primary fours discussing the rainforest, and it has been taken from a suite of resources on group discussion created by Education Scotland. As you watch, focus on one learner and give consideration to what they do well, what might their next steps be. Our progression pathway would help with this.
Here's a question. Would you like to live in the tropical rainforest?
Well, I would, but I wouldn't because all the poison animals and all the dangerous animals that I've heard of, well, kinda would, but not that much.
I would like to, but you would need to have the certain things to live there because, like Casty said, the dangerous animals, if they were there, you'd need stuff to protect yourself. But it would be really good if you lived there because you could still put your, make a house up high, in the trees, on the branches, so that the animals can't get up that high to you.
True. I would like to, but the same as Cassie, I wouldn't really because there's quite dangerous animals and there's poisonous animals and you would maybe get poisoned and then you would need to you'd be ill.
I wouldn't like to because there's all the wild animals and then they could
attack you.
Yeah.
Callum?
I kinda would like to. If I could build power cables and buy everything.
It's really good, but you would have to have all the medications to help you, but still, if you had the snakes, it would be scary.
Yeah, you would need to have all the medications if you catch a disease or anything.
And you would have to have the weapons. I found out in the computer last night that the Yanomami tribe, the poison arrow frog, they hold it very carefully, and then the frog thinks, oh, they're attacking me, and it gives off their poison, and they get their poison dart, and then they go, and it goes and it kills animals. Well, you would have to have the confidence and the courage to do that.
Pause the video here and share your thoughts with your group. Be prepared to share to the wider room. The QR code will take you directly to the listening and talking progression pathways if you think it would be helpful. As you watch the next clip, think about the learning that has taken place previous to this. What strategies do you think have been used? Continue when you are ready.
Great readers make great writers, whilst great writers make great communicators, and great communicators make great persuaders. And you know what great persuaders make? They make good societies, and that's what this world needs. I think that it's totally crazy that all anyone ever talks about is games, TV shows, WhatsApp, Instagram, Bitmoji. I don't even know what that is. My brother just told me about it. WeChat, Kiki, Saraha, and I could go on forever. Studies have shown that some kids these days even spend 6.5 hours on a screen a day. I think we should draw attention to this problem. However, not reading can even result in making your brain less active or engaged. Just over the past year, I've enjoyed reading Winnetou by Carl May, the Harry Potter series with 8 books, Roald Dahl series with 12 books, and the Unwanted series with 7 books, and many, many single books in between. Some I've liked less, some I've liked more, but they all took me for such an adventure. Ask my family members. I'm a truly unhappy child when I don't have a good book to read right next to me. I love reading in places like my bed, on the move while walking, in the toilet, in queues, in vehicles, but more importantly, at home. I hide behind various corners of my house so nobody can find me and make me do anything else. Once I even hid behind a flower pot and pretended to be the flower, not moving at all. Nobody could find me for ages. It was hilarious. I read everywhere. So, for all of you skeptical people out there, let me tell you, when you have a good book to keep you company, there is nothing better in the universe. It takes you to places where you can't go, and lets you meet people you can't meet. Reading is love in action. And the positives are endless. Like, I usually never have to study for spelling tests, and it makes my vocabulary so good that it easily impresses any grown-up. Sometimes, the first thing I know is I've just had a short conversation with the grown-up, and the next thing I know is there's a room full of adults talking about me. I can't imagine my life without a book. What I'm comparing is the lost art of reading, writing, communicating, and persuading to some of the great societal ills of the text message, the tweet, and the snap. While these wonders of modern technology have their place, we, the young generation, have to hold on to reading. It's the key to our kingdom. So go out there, find a good book, not just any book. The best are the ones recommended by another kid. And just go for it.
Pause the video here and share your thoughts on what learning and classroom strategies might have been used leading up to this presentation. Continue when you're ready. There are several strategies we can use to assess listening and talking in the classroom. We'll look at a few of them now. The idea behind talk detectives is that using a tick list of talk guidelines or the success criteria of a lesson, 2 or 3 learners observe the talk activity, looking out for those following and sticking to the guidelines or meeting the success criteria. They then feed back their observations. The adult can also assume the role of a talk detective as a means of formatively assessing learning. The short video that follows shows talk detectives in action, adding an element of peer assessment to the activity.
Right, as we are having our discussion, we are going to have 2 talk detectives that are going to be coming around and spying. So today we use talk detectives, which go around and listen into people's discussions. And I want you to see if you can spot anybody that is using any of our discussion guidelines, okay? Right, off you go. Discussion guidelines were created in conjunction with the children. We looked at key things that we think make a really good discussion.
You would worship a God to give you the power. I agree with you.
Having a clear set of guidelines makes sure that discussion is really, really focused. Ashante, did you hear anybody using any of our discussion guidelines?
I heard that Ria was building onto Anna's idea.
Since I've started Talk Detectives, the children think about their conversations kind of metacognitively, and it has really good learning outcomes as well.
They just came to a shared agreement.
Excellent.
Pause the video here and take some time to consider how you might use this approach within your setting. What do you see as the benefits and what, if any, might be the drawbacks? Continue when you're ready. Another method of assessing listening and talking is a discussion map. Back in the 1930s, American philanthropist Edward S. Harkness funded an approach at a private school in New Hampshire centred on developing critical thinking skills and learner-led discussions. The resulting method can today be used as an observation tool to collect evidence of learner engagement in group discussion. The short clip that follows explains how a Harkness discussion works.
My favorite way to structure a whole class student-centered discussion is through the Harkness table. This is a student-led discussion strategy similar to Socratic seminars. It was started at Phillips Exeter, a highly selective American boarding school, and it's now used widely among the most effective private, international, independent schools and universities. Many public schools are also adopting the Harkness method to 1. Develop students' thinking and speaking skills, 2. To improve students' collaboration skills, and 3. Foster critical thinking. To facilitate a Harkness discussion, first have students read a particular chapter in a book. review a specific article, watch a common video, or engage in the same experience. Then, students should write one of two things: questions or opinions related to the topic. Afterwards, arrange students facing one another in a circle, not towards the teacher. The circle allows for everyone to talk to each other and not to the back of other people's heads. It creates a sense of community and collaboration. Now, invite students to tackle one question as a group at a time. Let them share ideas, form connections, refer back to the text, and respectfully challenge ideas. What's our role? We've already done a lot of the work by selecting the text, the video, or the shared experience. We usually sit outside the circle and track the conversation like this. The ideal size of a Harkness discussion is about 15 students, but I have found that it works even better to have students in groups of 5 to 6. But I would do this only when students are already familiar with the process.
By mapping or tracking the conversation, the teacher, as an observer, can identify who's taking part, who's dominating, who's disengaged. It can also be used to track talk tactics or success criteria. The observer key can be adapted to suit your purpose. Whilst the example in the clip was based on a text, Romeo and Juliet, the stimulus could be anything of your choice, so long as there is clear success criteria as to what skills you might be observing. As learners get used to the process, they themselves can become the observer. Pause the video here and for a moment put yourself in your learner's shoes. You've been focusing on exploratory talk, talk to share an opinion, and practicing the skills and the success criteria. In groups of 6, form a circle and nominate an observer. Create a Harkness map for those in the group that will be involved in the discussion. As you discuss the talking point, track the discussion. Use the code to mark who you observe meeting the success criteria. Continue when you're ready. Pause the video here and take some time to consider how you might use this approach within your setting. What might be its benefits? What might be the challenges? Continue when you're ready. The gathering of evidence is an important part of the moderation cycle. All of the apps shown here have the capability of recording learners, whether it's voice only or movie style, to help create a bank of evidence of progression in learning. To help track progress through and across levels, a listening and talking assessment on a page document and Excel spreadsheet have been created. You might be familiar with this from the first session when we looked at creating a baseline of where our learners were before engaging in this development sprint. The QR code on the screen will take you to the document and spreadsheet should you wish to spend some time looking at it. It is also in the support resource file. Managing moderation and assessment happens in the classroom, between learning stages and across a school as a whole. So how does this look through the lens of Oracy and the development of listening and talking skills? We have, of course, our learners at the centre, followed by our planning, spaces, interactions and experiences, along with our learning intentions and success criteria, a variety of experiences and pedagogy to meet learners' needs based on our E's and O's and guided by progression pathways. We have clearly outlined learning intentions and success criteria that are clear, relevant and measurable. Then we look at learning, teaching and assessment. It is important to gain a balance of ongoing and periodic assessment. In other words, our formative and summative assessment methods. Across all levels, establishing a baseline of where our learners are in their learning will help to identify next steps and gaps in learning that need to be addressed. The progression pathways in the assessment on a page documents can help with this. There are several elements that should be in place to ensure good learning, teaching and assessment in listening and talking. These include evaluating your environment, thinking spaces, experiences and interactions as highlighted in the first listening and talking session. Audits have been created to support this and can be found in the support document file. We need to ensure the provision of the talk-rich experiences from session 3. Provocation, prompts, talking point, making thinking visible are on offer to facilitate talk planned or otherwise, across all areas of the curriculum, referring to the talk guidelines you created as a setting and using the talk tactics to support and engage discussion. Listening and talking is perhaps best assessed formatively through observation of everyday talk-ish tasks, including planned talk. You can, however, create a specific task in which you are looking for a specific skill to be demonstrated, making it more summative in nature. The use of digital tools to record such tasks, either in voice note or video form, make the assessment more low-key than if it was done in real time. Our next point on our moderation cycle is our gathering of evidence. As has been said previously, having a baseline of where the learners are at gives a starting point from where to begin new learning. It was suggested in session 1 that creating a baseline would help measure progress throughout the implementation of this approach to listening and talking. It is also an important step to measure progress at any time, supporting effective planning of appropriate next steps. Make use of digital technologies and iPads to record and video children in discussion, and use the discussion guidelines, talk tactics or talking tools. At second level, the children can observe a discussion group in action and become talk detectives to provide feedback to the group. At first level, you could do the same thing but have trios observe each other and give feedback relating to either the discussion guidelines or the success criteria of the lesson. At early level, the teacher can observe the talk taking place at particular areas of the provision and using the framework and make notes of how the children are engaging and talking to each other. You may observe a different area of the room each week to monitor engagement and development of talk-rich experiences. You can also record or video children's talk related to a provocation in any of the levels. Review this evidence either by yourself or with the children, depending on the age and stage of the class, and evaluate where the next steps in learning would be. Evaluation. At early level and probably later in the academic year, children will become familiar with the learning environment, know the expectations for talking and listening, where they have the discussion guidelines modelled by all of the adults around them. For a summative assessment, you can re-record video discussions in different areas of the room, within gather time, in talk partner time, and gauge the progress using the progression pathways. At first and second level, evaluation will take place formatively as you get feedback from the children and gauge engagement in the rich talk experiences on offer throughout the curriculum. The children will have developed familiarity of the discussion guidelines and of the talk tactics. You will have evidence from children's peer assessment of discussion times, peer assessment of how they have progressed using the framework and the progression pathways. You may also have video and recordings of talk and can compare and contrast progress from the beginning of the stage to developing to the end of a piece of work. Your summative assessment will be working with the children to judge where they have developed their skills in light of the progression pathways. Feedback, as always, related to the success criteria. And as a school, bring your evidence together to share the process and how you've developed each stage. Share the progress so far and where you will develop the next stages. Correlate this evidence as a school. Are you seeing a significant level of progress? Can you pinpoint the most effective strategies for learning? Where are the barriers to progress? You should share helpful suggestions around next steps as a team, as this will enable consistency, up-leveling of professional skills for all, and knowledge that you are not alone in this learning journey. Always be kind, supportive and encouraging throughout all of this process. Developing something different from the norm is hard. Each person will do things slightly different, but we all need to learn from each other and be clear on what our main goal is and pursue that goal. As we draw towards the end of the session, let's take some time to reflect on what we have heard. We have reminded ourselves of the moderation cycle and the role it plays in ensuring and maintaining robust, confident judgments around assessment, and then looked at the cycle through a listening and talking lens, identifying what and when we should assess in listening and talking. We've looked at what assessment of listening and talking might look like through talk detectives, observations, and how discussion mapping through a Harkness map can be used as an assessment tool, reminding ourselves of the digital tools we can use to collect evidence, and looked again at the SBC Way assessment tracking resource for listening and talking. Pause the video here and take some time to consider today's content. What would be your 3 main takeaways? Tomorrow, what might you do different in your classroom? Share with your group and continue when you're ready. So, what's next? Hopefully over these sessions you have developed a deeper understanding of why Oracy and not just listening and talking, and can see the benefits of teaching the deeper skills of Oracy. We have learned some valuable lessons from our early years colleagues and the importance of ensuring our spaces, experiences and interactions are conducive to both planned and unplanned opportunities for talk. We have taken a look at the talk categories within the SBC Way progression pathway that are best suited to developing oral skills in the beginning, and have familiarised ourselves with the skills within the pathways, seeing how they link to the Oracy framework and our National Curriculum for Excellence benchmarks. We've looked at talk types, and hopefully you have gained some handy hints and tips on how to incorporate these into your practice, alongside how we can collect evidence using digital tools and track progress. The next steps are over to you as a school, as an individual practitioner, to embed this approach to listening and talking, to achieve that aspirational aim of all learners across Scottish borders being able to speak eloquently, articulate ideas and thoughts, influence through talk, collaborate with peers and have the confidence to express their views. This video into action session is part of a new approach we are introducing in an attempt to support all schools and all practitioners across SBC to engage with the same message and activities, but at an individually convenient time. By providing video content with in-person facilitators in each school, whilst not the same as full live sessions, we can achieve widespread learning. Your feedback on how to max this approach is really valuable. All that's left to say now is thank you for your time today and over the previous sessions. Here's to making a difference to the lives and learning of our children and young people.